Gail Gelburd. Welcome to my exhibition called The Nature of Our Mind. And it's about our relationship to the environment. So, for example, nature can represent the different parts of our psyche. So it might be a raging storm sometimes, it might be a bubbling brook, it might be a cold pond or a tree reaching up. So what I wanted to do is create an exhibition that related nature to our states of mind. And about a year ago, I had a tsunami in my life. And how do we deal with a tsunami? We all have tsunamis in our life, right? How do we deal with it? So for me, of course, as an artist, at first I couldn't even make art. And then when I began to make art, I began to go through the different stages of sorrow and anger and frustration. So the first piece I did for this series is over here. It's called Cowering. So at first, in the midst of the tsunami, and I painted a tsunami, and in the midst of the tsunami, if you see close up here, it's like a little girl cowering and crying. And that's how I felt, and I'm sure many of you have felt that way. So here she is stuck in the midst of it, and you'll see this piece is fairly small, but you'll notice that all of the pieces related to the series come from the same photograph of the painting that I did of the tsunami. And at one point you'll see the original painting of the tsunami. So here she is, there's a storm brewing, and she's stuck in the middle. But then she's trying to come out of the tsunami. So this is the piece I call the face of the tsunami. She's merging out of the tsunami. And all of these pieces are photography, encaustic paint, and sometimes become sculpture. And at the end of our little talk today, I'll show you how I do that. So the encaustic paint is a combination of wax and pigment. And this, with the wax, I can mold the face. And the wax here gives texture. This one is actually, the photograph is printed on fabric, which is what enabled me to mold the face to be coming out of the tsunami. As we're struggling, this one is called The Struggle. The figure is trying to get out from inside the tsunami. Think about it. How do you deal with a tsunami? I make art. Someone told me they do fly fishing. You might meditate. Some people drink and do drugs. I think art is a much better way, and hopefully the art can relate to you. So here, the figure, I drew this figure on top of the photograph and the encaustic to show her struggling to break out of the tsunami. And you can see that if you look closely here, the paint is, she's trying to step on the paint, the water is following her, she's trying to push out from here. This little piece over here is called Containment. And if you look carefully, you can see there's a hand on the top and bottom. So again, the tsunami is pushing out, right? The center of the tsunami. But our hands are holding it in place and trying to contain the tsunami. So, but the hands are outside. So the other pieces you've seen so far, we were sort of stuck in the tsunami. But here we're trying to contain it. And the next piece I call Empowerment. She has broken outside of the tsunami. She's standing there, and you have to look carefully to see her drawn in here. She purposely somewhat blends in with the paint. She was drawn in pastel, so this piece is a photograph. It's encaustic, it's collage, it's pastel, and it's enamel paint over here. She needed everything. So she is standing outside, and now you can see she's bigger than the tsunami, because when we take control of it, we are bigger. We can look down on it, and we can see it. And in this way, she could begin to contemplate that tsunami and how to move forth from it. This is one of the first pieces that I did of the tsunami series. She's called Dantian. And I first just did the sculpture, and the photograph is printed on fabric, then it's molded over the form, and then it's added with encaustic paint and wax. So if you look, the waterfall is coming down and it pools over here, which is, your hara, or your center, which is called dantian. And this is where you contemplate and meditate. So here she is, if you notice carefully, her leg isn't even on the pedestal. She's trying to find balance. So in one hand, the water, which is made out of wax, is dripping off her hand. In the other, she's holding it. So as she tries to strike that balance in life, which we all need to try to do. But then I decided to paint this tsunami painting. And this was the first of the tsunami paintings, what is behind her. And I said, well, this way, she's trying to find a balance in the tsunami of life. And she's standing on more water so that the water drips down. And the water is across the floor. So this is why when you see the water that's on the floor pieces, it is the movement of the water across the floor. So it comes down from her and leaves off the floor, and the tsunami is out of the way. She's outside of the tsunami. When you walk into the gallery, you are in the water. Why should art only be on the wall? So here it's also on the floor. And what I provided is a little seat for you to, at the end, do your own meditation and contemplation of the water. Because there's the sound of the water in the gallery, there's the smell of the water in the gallery, and each person who comes is invited to come and sit on the stool and meditate about their own tsunamis. So this piece is the river and the waterfall rushing, and the trees are emerging from it, and it's called Mind Over Matter. Because at the end of the day, it's our mind that can control how we deal with the raging water that we see here. In this piece over here, this is emerging. We see that the figure is emerging from the tsunami. It's coming out of it. So each of these finds a different way to do that. Okay, this is after the storm. So after the storm, we try to find a state of calm. So she is in a mudra, which is a teaching mudra, but this hand is reaching to the earth. So she's again finding that balance. And if you look carefully, she almost has a childlike presence to her. Like before the child was cowering, but now the child is reaching out, being enlightened, meditating, and you see there's like an inner eye here, and that gold is streaming down on top of her as she sits there meditating. This again is a photograph that is molded onto a form, and then it is added to with encaustic paint and gold leaf as well to get her sitting there in quiet meditation after the storm. This piece is to present a sense of calm and peace and hope, which is at the end we want. If you look, this is actually Bashbish Falls, and this is a stupa. Everyone thinks it's a person sitting there, but it's just a combination of rocks, which I caught in a photograph that it looked like a person sitting there. So the idea of this person turning to stone, finding this peaceful meditation forever up on this plinth of rock as well. And again, it's a photograph with encaustic and it has collage, but it's finding a state of calm. And the title of this piece is Essence of the Sublime. And that's what we all seek to be a part of. There are other pieces in the show, but I wanted to end it with this one and another piece which I call Enlightenment. So the sculpture that I have here is called Metamorphosis. So it's about the transformation, and you can see part of her hand is coming through, part of it is the water dripping down, her hand coming through. She's going through that metamorphosis to ultimately, let me move her out of the way a little bit, to ultimately find enlightenment. And this piece is a light box, and it's the water that we see here, and the light from the sun is coming through. And what I love to share with people is that because it's a light box, this is when the light is off. And you can see that there's still this sun setting there. And then when we put the light on, it becomes much more dramatic from the light box. So I'm happy to share all of my journey through the tsunami and nature. And I'd love to hear what you think the best way to get over a tsunami. And the exhibition is up until the 28th at Art on Main Gallery. And I'm giving an artist talk if you would like to come and ask me questions on July 27th, Saturday at 4 p.m. I'll be giving a talk about it. But before you all go, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a demonstration of how these pieces come to be. And if you come to the artist talk on Saturday the 27th, you can get to see firsthand and try your hand at a little bit of encaustics as well and see how I create these effects. So these pieces are also done with encaustic over fabric. And let me tell you what encaustic is. It's actually one of the oldest art techniques there is. The Egyptians, if you've been to a museum and you see panel painting, they're done with encaustic. Encaustic is wax with pigment, and modern day encaustic also has resin in it, which makes it stronger and last longer and make it more archival. But they've lasted a long time because we can still see those encaustic paintings that were done with wax. And I'll show you in the demonstration how you actually use the wax and why when you melt it with the colors, you can paint on it and then it dries instantly. So it's a great thing to use over an art sculpture on fabric or on a two-dimensional piece as well. All of my works start with a photograph, which might be on a matte paper because the encaustic has to seep into it. And here, when I do it on, print the photograph on fabric, you can see I mold it with the wax so that it suddenly has a three-dimensional texture, and I can do whatever I want with it. Then, if you look, the encaustic gives me all kinds of textures. This is just my sample that shows all different textures. And the beauty of encaustic is that it's very forgiving. So encaustic comes in blocks like these with different colors. And I'm just going to use a brush here and a heat gun. I usually have a hot plate that I use. And then if I melt the wax a little bit on here, you can see you see the color coming on. And if I don't like it, I can spread it more. I can do all kinds of things with it, even once it's on there. And then, the other thing that I can do then is I can take oil stick, such as I have here, and then it goes right on top of it. So I can put some color in this piece as well. So that the combination of the encaustic and the oil stick lets me add to the piece so that I begin to paint more and more on it. And if I just want to add texture, I can just be adding texture to the photograph by adding the encaustic on there. And then once this gets soft, I can brush on the piece. So you can see I can exaggerate what's going on in it. So it's just, it could be subtle, as I just did, or it can be very textured and elaborate, as you see here. So that's what's happening with all these pieces is photography, and you can go over this one, you can see photography, drawing, pastel, and lots of texture. I like to have them without glass so people can come and touch it and see all the texture. That's part of the fun part. And that's how I created the nature of your mind with photography and encaustic. And I hope you can come by to Art on Main in West Stockbridge and see the exhibition. You can go to gailgelburd.com to see my website, and you can come Saturday the 27th for an artist talk.